much to impress your friends. Let's all help welcome Steve to the stage.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. Big little room here. We're going to do a presentation, have a little fun with science today. Do we have any beer drinkers in the audience this evening? Okay, great. Tonight I'm going to give you a quick crash course that's going to give you a greater appreciation of all the hard work and science and history that goes into a delicious glass of beer. We're going to start all the way at the beginning with the grain. That's a grain. A grain of barley. Barley is filled with starch. We can't use the starch yet. We actually want to turn this into sugar. So what we do is we give it some water, we let it germinate, and then we stop the process. What has happened when germination starts, now some enzymes are created and formed inside the grain. Now we stop this process and we actually roast these grains, much like you roast coffee beans. Lighter roast is going to give you lighter flavors. In beer, that's bready, light, maybe citrusy. As we get darker and darker roast, we're getting into coffee, chocolate, roasty flavors like that. This is now called malt, okay? And so it's dry and it's hard as a rock. It'd crack your teeth if you tried to bite it. So now we need to process it. This is a crude mill. So we're going to send this grain through here, and this is a crude crack in the grain. And now the starch and the enzyme inside the grain is exposed. Now it's time to make some oatmeal. So we've got a big old tub here. We're going to call this our mash tun, and we're going to create a mash. A mash is a mix of hot water, about 150 degrees Fahrenheit, and our cracked grains. It's basically oatmeal, except we're using barley instead of oats. And what happens is we let this sit for about an hour, and science takes over. The hot water starts to break down the starch. It activates the enzymes that start to convert the starches into sugars. So now after an hour, we're left with a big old vat of really sweet, sugary oatmeal. We're done with the grains. We don't need the grains anymore. So anyone ever boil pasta? If you rinse your pasta in a colander in the sink with the sieve, so that's exactly what we're going to do here. Our mash tun is equipped with what's called a false bottom, with all these neat little holes in the bottom. So we are going to drain this liquid, this mash, through this sieve, and we're going to also spray some hot water on top that's going to help rinse the sugars off of the grains. And for the purpose of this demonstration, we magically put this through a pump, and this now gets sent over to a boil kettle. So what we have done here is we have created a new liquid called wort, W-O-R-T, pronounced wort, E-R-T. So this is basically really sugary, really syrupy. It would not be much fun to drink. It's kind of like Mountain Dew. We need some balance. So what we do here is we boil this for 60 to 90 minutes. It takes 90 actually, because we're at altitude. We have a lower boiling temperature in Colorado. So during that 90 minutes, all of the bad stuff we don't want, these volatile compounds, boil off, and we're left with a much more homogeneous mixture in here that we can work with. And we also need to boil our hops. Who here can tell me what a hop is?
It's actually one of the other plants in the cannabis family, and it's more like a vine that grows. And it has a very, very pungent, skunky aroma. In a nutshell, the part of the hop we use, that's all correct, is a flower. Exactly. And it has antiseptic qualities that was used in early brewing to kind of help preserve the beer, but it's actually, the primary reason we use hops, the primary reason is because it has bittering acids in it, alpha and beta acids. We have to get those acids converted or broken down, isomerized. So we boil the hops. The little hops we add in here into the boil. If we add hops early in the boil, we extract the bitter flavor. If we add them late in the boil, we extract aroma, flavor, and nose. So anyone here like India Pale Ales? Mm-hmm. Okay, you're a hop head. This is what you like. You like the hops that come in late, really around 60 minutes into the boil. You can even add hops further down the road during fermentation. That's called dry hopping. That's another story. So right now we have our boil is done. Our acids from our hops are all converted. We're good. Now we need to cool this off. So again, for the purpose of demonstration, we have a magical contraption here called a heat exchanger. Cold water comes in, hot wort comes in,
cold tap water picks up the heat and pulls it away, dumps it down a drain. The cooled wort now goes into another vessel. And this one is our fermenter. Now our cooled wort is in here, and for the purpose, we'll keep it simple. We're just going to talk about ales, not lagers. Ales ferment at around 70 degrees, 60s and 70s. So we get this down to 70 degrees, and now we can add our yeast. So it's been said that brewers don't really make the beer. We just set the table for the yeast. What are yeast? Yeast are these magical little creatures that are in the air in this very room right now. They make bread, and more importantly, a certain variety of them makes beer through fermentation. In a nutshell, not to be too crude, but basically yeast loves the sugar. It eats the sugar, it poops ethanol, and it farts CO2. More or less, beer is yeast waste, but it's delicious waste, isn't it? So fermentation is this process of the conversion. It takes 5 to 10 days for most ales. And afterwards, during the process, it's vigorous. The CO2 is given off. It's really pretty neat to watch. After 10 days of fermentation slows down, the yeast drops out of suspension, collects at the bottom. We cold crash it. We cool the temperature down to about 35 degrees to help clarify, but there's still yeast in suspension. One more vessel. Now we're going to send it over to a bottling bucket. We'll keep this very simple for a home brewing example. Now we have, this is beer. It's alcoholic. We don't have carbonation. We need to carbonate it. So what we're going to do is we're going to put this, first we're going to add a little bit of corn sugar, which is dextrose, which is a very clean fermenting sugar. You get no aroma or taste out of it. Add a little bit of sugar there, mix it up, and now we put it in the bottles. This is probably going to be a bad drawing, but that's not too bad. So the beer goes in here, and it's got sugar in suspension. It's got yeast in suspension. So what we do is we're actually creating another fermentation inside the bottle. This is called bottle conditioning or secondary fermentation. We cork it or we cap the bottle. Yeast eats the sugar, farts a little, craps a little more ethanol, farts a little more CO2. Now it's carbonated. You have carbonated beer in your bottle. So the next time you crack open a beer, remember this beautiful drawing of how it starts out as a grain, goes through this very precise process, and ends up as a carbonated beer in the bottle, which you pour into that delicious glass and enjoy. If you need more help with this, I'm happy to join you for a drink down the street at the brew pub after this meeting.
All right. Thank you, Steve. That was an amazing education, and screw your new job at Excel Energy.